Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to the latest episode in our new series called My Supervisor, the PhD podcast for the School of Politics and Economics at King's College London. In each episode, we'll be speaking to a doctoral candidate from one of our departments to pick their brains about all things PhD, from their research and ideas to their revelations and advice. We hope to offer a platform for those studying with us to showcase their work while offering invaluable insight into what life is like studying to become a doctor. If nothing else, we hope you finish up today having learned something you didn't know when you started it. My name is Daniel Mansfield. I am the Communications Officer for the School of Politics and Economics here at King's, and I'm pleased to introduce you to my co-host for this episode, Yahya El Said, a second-year undergraduate studying politics here at King's. Hi, Yahya.
Hello, happy to be here.
And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our guest for this episode, Lina Kramer, a doctoral candidate studying with the Department of Political Economy. Welcome, Lina.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Good stuff. So with that, we're going to make a start. And Lina, for the first question, I'm going to ask you to introduce your research. So if you can give us the title and a brief overview, please.
Yeah, of course. Hi, I'm Lina. I'm in the Department of Political Economy, and I'm working on a project called the AI Government. That's what I named it. And the AI government aims at designing tax policies through using reinforcement learning. So my research question is, first of all, can AI actually design tax policies that are economically and politically sustainable? And can AI improve tax policies under these conditions even? I thereby use AI. I specifically use a certain brand of machine learning called reinforcement learning to model this economy, basically. And I got the idea basically from a paper called The AI Economist by Zhang et al. So they have done something similar using AI to simulate an economy, and I expand on that and use not just an economic setting, but a political economy setting.
Perfect. Okay. And if you could please just provide us with more of the intricacies of the research. Let's delve into the role of reinforcement learning. Of course, we've seen ChatGPT gain a lot of popularity of late, which uses reinforcement learning by, through its free trial, and people get to use it and give feedback. But of course, we know that when it comes to policies, that can't be the case. We can't just trial and error policies. So can you please just delve into how reinforcement learning would work in AI government?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So first of all, maybe for those that aren't that familiar with AI, so AI is a very big field of algorithms, basically, and a subfield of AI is machine learning. So having algorithms that can learn and can improve their outcome. And there are different types of machine learning, and I specifically use reinforcement learning, meaning a system generates an action and gets feedback from the environment and gets a reward or a punishment through that environment, and thereby informs its future actions, basically. So it learns to navigate through an environment by interacting with the environment through punishment and reward, basically. So and as you said, yes, we can't, or like especially with policies like taxation, or for example, we can't just go out and test it on the wider population, right? That would probably produce some protest. So what I'm doing is I use multi-agent reinforcement learning, meaning I have different types of agents. So one is the policymaker and one are the citizens, basically. And because both agents are learning agents, both types of agents are learning agents, and they interact with each other and with the environment, that's how I try to simulate the economy and try to improve their outcomes. So improve the text scheme, as well as the focus is not on the reactions of the people or the agents that I classify as people in my system, but rather on the tax policy. So improve the tax policy by interacting with agents that act as people. And then later the idea is to test the outcome. So this trained model, the policymaker, the improved text scheme, to test that then with in an experiment with humans, basically. So ask them to interact with the AI policymaker and see if their reactions, their behavior is similar, actually similar as the AI agents' behavior that portrayed humans, normal people, basically.
Okay, so tax and AI, they're huge fields, right? And they're enormously complicated and difficult to unpick, and there are so many niches within them. So I guess I would ask, what is it about those areas, one or both areas, that really sort of set you on this path to the PhD? Like, why did you choose these for your areas, as it were?
I think it helps to understand where, like, what my background was. I studied politics in my undergrad, and I studied economics in my master's. And then after that, I worked for the German government to digitalize basically the German government, like as a consultant. And I think so I embarked on this journey of the PhD because I wanted, well, to improve my education further and actually work on a project where I become an expert, but then also to combine all my previous fields of education, so to say, or like my previous fields of experience. And I felt like I've always been very, very interested in AI. I think it's fascinating what AI can do, and I think there's much more in store. I mean, I'm also a bit scared of like some of the not so bright outcomes, but I do think it's an extremely interesting field to work in, and it definitely, if you know about AI, your future work is secured, I think. So my idea was taking AI and applying it to my previous fields of expertise, basically. So like trying to combine all of this. Yeah, and that led me to this project, because I read this paper by Zhang and Al, and I was like, this is so great. But there are some holes in this. Like, the idea is great, but there are gaps, and I think I can fill these gaps. So that's what got me started.
That's wonderful. I'd love to get your insight regarding, seeing as your background is in Germany and with government there. Love to get your insight on the relationship between the German government and AI. I mean, Germany has forever been renowned for its efficiency and historically advanced technological sector. However, the country's been relatively slow to integrate AI in its government. It ranked 11th of the 28 EU countries in the digitalization and government and infrastructure. So why do you believe that's been the case, and do you see this changing in the near future?
Yes, that is the case I experienced myself when working for the public sector as a consultant. And I think there are several reasons for that. I think one reason is that it wasn't like a top priority for Germany, at least not before COVID. So there were laws in place which demanded the public sector to digitalize by a certain time frame. But although these laws have been known for like years, like 5 years, everyone, like all the agencies and ministries, they all waited till like the very last minute to actually start working on it and then apply for extensions and so on. So I think so it wasn't a priority. That's one thing. The other thing is, so the German public sector is known, I think, for its bureaucracy. Like we do have a very a big public sector with a lot of rules and a lot of hierarchy and all this. So I don't think that's helping us to be very like to be more agile and to modernize more quickly. So I think those are factors that have led to such a slow progress in this field. Also, I mean, a lot of people working in the public sector are rather older. The public sector in Germany generally has problems attracting young talents. So because also, I mean, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Young people do perceive the public sector as being old-fashioned and not being able to change anything about it. So they don't go into the sector trying to change anything. So, and the old people, like the people that have been in the public sector, public servants for years, they're like, I just want to, like do as I like continue doing it as I did the last 30 years, because 5 more years and I'm going to be out anyway. So that's like the whole problem with this. I do think there are initiatives of like pushing or like testing AI applications of automating more and more processes, because we do see the problem in Germany that because the public sector has issues attracting younger people, attracting good workforce, but on the other hand has issues of increasing challenges in terms of like more and more topics the public sector needs to deal with, but then also more and more people they have to administer. So all this leads to a demand to automate, because not enough people actually working in the public sector, but more people that needs to be administered. Yeah, that creates a gap that needs to be filled by machines in the end.
Okay, so how about your research methods then? How are you going about it? Have you got big data sets? Are you having to do some programming? Are you relying on interviews, for example? What's the methodology?
So the methodology is rather new for the field of politics and economics, because as I mentioned, like I'm using AI, so that AI has not been applied to this research field much. It has been applied a lot of times in terms of like natural language processing, like taking data, for example, from social media or so, and interpreting those data sets. But it has not been like reinforcement learning specifically has not been applied to these fields much yet. There are a few examples, but like this is rather novel. And what I do is I need very limited data, so that's the good thing. I have like some input data to calibrate the model to fit a certain economy. But then the rest is a simulation, based on pure economic principles, and like with a certain degree of like that's what the AI agent gets to decide, right? So that's like not within my decision making, but that's actually the action space of the AI. And what how I do that is, yeah, it's programming. It's I use Python and I program the code and yeah, then train the model. So because you basically build all the components for the simulation. So you build the agents and their action spaces and their observation spaces. So what can they do? What can they observe? And because I have different kinds of agents, so I need to program that. Then you build the environment. Where do they interact? And then, yeah, you let it run and let them train. So a lot of iterations of like interacting, basically.
I must say, I tried to teach myself HTML a while back, and I was delighted that I could change the color of a web page. So, what is it like trying to learn and apply Python?
It's been very difficult, I'm not going to lie, because I'm self-taught in Python. I only started learning Python when I started the PhD, so I've not coded much before. I mean, I was used to using R, for example, and I've had like a bit of coding experience from high school and prior uni degrees, but I've not used Python before. So I started Python when I started the PhD, and back then I started during COVID, so that was a bit difficult. So it was all online classes basically, and yeah, I try to look into as many programming classes as possible to just, learn the basics, and then more and more focus on applying Python to AI or using Python to program AI. So because you can use Python for all kinds of things, so the application of Python is like very vast. But yeah, I specifically then like looked into applying it to AI. And to be honest, I also like books, YouTube videos, and online classes. They're great free online classes out there. Yeah. And it's never too late to start to learn programming. It can be frustrating at times, but it's also very rewarding once you get something to work, like it's, yeah, it can make your day.
And has there been anything about the work you've done so far that has surprised you or stood out among your findings? I mean, I've used Chat GPT a few times, and it tends to blow my mind every time I use it. So I can only imagine what you may have come across in the stuff that you've built.
Yeah, so what I find very interesting is so AI seems to be able to design income tax in income tax schedule that is better, or like in that environment at least performs better than the income tax schedules out there. So better in terms of there is the productivity and equality trade-off, and AI is able to improve this trade-off basically, so make society more equal while not discouraging labor input too much. So AI is able to do that, and how it does that, surprisingly, despite the theoretical framework, it does it by taxing the median or the middle income workers the highest, actually. So that's very much different than our progressive tax system, right, where we tax the high earning potentials the highest, and here it's actually the middle income workers that are taxed the highest, and both ends, so the low income people and the high income people are taxed lower. So I find that very interesting, and I think expanding the model and including also a political dynamic to it, so voting behavior, will enrich this whole model even further. So would, according to theory, the median voter decides, is responsible for deciding the tax schedule, basically, and in introducing that to the economic model where we have the equality and productivity trade-off. I'm very curious to see what happens. So I'm not there yet, but I'm working on it, and I'm happy to let you know as soon as I do.
Just to touch on a point you made earlier, if possible, AI AI will allow governments to ingest all available data, right? Like publicly held as well as data bought from private sources to build a fine-grained representation of each citizen and their preferences, and to adapt public policy as a result. And even in real time, if necessary, it could be constantly adapting. So, what do you believe are the most significant implications of this development for traditional democratic models on the political scale?
I actually think it would change traditional democratic models. I mean, as with a lot of things, there are positive and negative effects to this, to introducing AI and to AI to decision making, basically, and having governments use AI for their policy development. I think one of the negative sides is, of course, there can be data bias, right? Like the outcomes heavily depends on what data do you feed into the AI. Is it really representative? And also another problem is AI, like it's often argued that by, like having AI decide or like develop a policy, it becomes more transparent because you don't have your, like, not people with their hidden agendas develop a policy, but a neutral objective system is developing it. But this transparency can be false, because the problem right now is that a lot of times we aren't really sure how AI decides, how AI comes to a certain conclusion, because it's kind of like a black box. Like, it can do very well, but sometimes we aren't sure how it got to that. And sometimes it doesn't perform very well, and we aren't even sure why that is. So there is a lot we still don't understand about AI. So that's why, that's one of the negatives. And I think it's dangerous to say, just we are just going to use AI. But a positive aspect is actually that I think it can make decision making much quicker, because it can provide a more rational view on things, and a more calculated output. And I do think and that's why I mean it would change the democrat or would allow to change the democratic system, because it would allow to have more direct democratic elements. Yeah, so I think there are pros and cons to both, but we obviously have to be careful on how we use AI.
Must say, Lina, before we wrap up for part one, I don't know how many votes your AI is going to win, taxing the middle income earners the most. It doesn't sound like a winner to me, I have to say. No, but really interesting that it would pick that system, and it, as far as you can tell, it seems to be more effective or better than the system we have in place at the moment.
That's what it says at the moment. We'll see. I'm working on making it more realistic and including other dynamics as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much. We're going to leave it there for part one now, and we're going to take a short break, and then we'll hand over to Yahia for our middle segment.
All right, Lina, you've been a wonderful guest so far, and now you've made it through part one, which focused on your research. We'll now have a brief segment called Real World Events, in which I'll be outlining 3 pressing news stories or contemporary real world events that relate to your field of research. And I'll then pose some questions to you after detailing each event regarding your thoughts or visions for the future based on these occurrences. So for the first one, just a couple days ago, the Prime Minister and Technology Secretary launched the government's plan to cement the UK's place as a science and technology superpower by 2030. And a crucial part of this plan, as emphasized by Rishi Sunak, is, quote, pursuing transformational technologies like AI, unquote. Do you believe the UK can be one of the first to adopt AI government in the development of tax systems if they continue to be so ambitious in their approach?
The UK can, yes. I mean, there are other countries out there that have a higher investment in AI and have quite a strong interest in AI in general. But the UK is up there too, and I do think the UK could be one of the first to adopt the AI government as a tool, because I mean it's the home advantage. It's built here, so there might be a bit more trust in it here. But ultimately, yeah, it could serve any government.
Perfect. I mean, but in the plan itself, there was no mention or reference to ideas relating to AI government, such as, the use of AI to perhaps develop tax systems. Do you believe this is purposeful? I mean, how is the idea of using AI to fulfill government functions generally perceived by members of today's governments? Is it seen as an opportunity or as a potential threat, um, in your estimation?
That's a good question. I think it's not mentioned so much yet because we are quite far away to having working systems that can actually inform policy. So there is some research being done on this, but it's not much yet. So um, applying AI to this field is rather new. And I mean, on the other hand, I do get that policymakers might perceive it as a threat because they might think that they will become redundant due to employing AI instead. But I think AI needs to we're far away from AI running the system, and so to speak. I think AI needs to gain the trust first, and there will need to be a human, in this case policymaker, that interprets the results and decides if that's actually feasible. Because I mean, AI results, as I mentioned earlier, like it's a black box, and AI results can be good, but it can be not the global maximum. It can be only a local maximum, if that makes sense. Like talking very in economic terms now, but just saying like the solution an AI system reaches may not be the optimal outcome out there. It may be a better one, but not the optimal one. It may not, like, the feasibility of things is difficult to include in such simulations as well. So that's why I'm saying, like, there will need to be a human interpreter, and so I think it should be perceived as an opportunity, but I do think it's often rather perceived as a threat because people don't understand AI much yet. So
When asked about what the major issues in the US tax process are, Ben Bordak, co founder and CEO of April, the world's only AI powered suite of embedded tax products, pointed to the fundamental complexity and asymmetrical nature of tax systems. He said that was the main issue currently with the US tax processes. So, do you believe AI government would reduce or increase the complexity of taxes to the general public?
I wish it would make it simpler because I think there are a lot of tax systems out there that are very, very complex. I mean, the German tax system is one of the most complex ones. However, the problem, or what it seems to do, is to give you a result, an alternative tax schedule that is rather unconventional and not necessarily easier to understand. So I actually think it's probably making tax more complex, but still complex, like that complexity, uh, maybe not a bad thing, as it improves the outcome of the economy. And if we have tax systems on the other side for people to, file their taxes, and they can use AI as well, or like automation technology to file their taxes, then that whole process might become much easier in the future.
And finally, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, the company responsible for some of the most mind blowing recent advances in AI, as I'm sure you're aware, believes no company, including his, should be trusted to set the boundaries for where AI could potentially go too far. The boundaries of AI should be decided, according to him, not by Microsoft or OpenAI, but by society and governments. Do you agree with this statement?
I actually do. I mean, the goal of companies is to make profit, and history has shown that that can sometimes be to the downside of, like, have negative effects, and on the population, on the environment, whatever. So can be only the companies only, or the stakeholders, shareholders only benefiting from it. So I do think using AI in such a context, or using AI in general, the boundaries should be decided by governments, by society. However, obviously that's difficult, is a difficult process, because as I mentioned earlier as well, like there isn't much understanding about AI yet. People, not ignorant, but it's actually not that difficult to understand. But I think it's like, if you have never engaged with it, it seems very foreign to you, and I think that's part of the problem. So deciding on something or setting boundaries for something you don't understand is obviously very difficult.
Yeah, and I don't know if you would agree, but I'd see it as a form of rational ignorance almost. They haven't really had to interact with it on that level yet, and perhaps when they are exposed to it, their knowledge of it will expand accordingly.
Yeah, I agree. I do think I mean, the younger generations, we grow up with smartphones, computers, and more technology in our lives. So I do think there is like the younger generations have digital literacy, basically, and this will increase over time. So I do think there's great hope for that, but obviously we have to make sure that we don't lose out or don't lose the other half of the population that isn't so familiar with all this. And I think when it comes to setting boundaries for such systems, I mean, it needs to be like the how these systems work needs to be translated and broken down for people to understand, so make it easily digestible. Basically, it's not easy and not an easy task, but it can be done. And I think then if it's easy enough to tell people, like, this is what you have to decide, like this is the area where you can decide the boundaries, what are the boundaries, what do you think is feasible, and then leave it up to the to the programmers to actually implement that. Like, normal people don't need to implement the boundaries, but it needs to be like the working of the AI needs to be explained in simple terms so that normal people can understand the working and like set the boundaries.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you very much for your insights. That's it for the segment. And now we'll be moving on to part two, in which we'll be discussing your PhD experience itself.
So welcome back, everyone, to part two of the podcast. In the first half, we were speaking to Lina about her research and her research methods specifically. And in this second half, we're going to be talking more about her personal experience of the PhD. And so for the first question, I am going to hand over to Yahia.
Have there been certain people or things or hobbies that have helped you kind of ease the load and take some time off so that you can, get the energy back and keep moving forward?
Yeah, definitely. I think starting during COVID, that was not the easiest, but I learned to make the most out of it. So seeing friends, first of all, making friends within the PhD community, and yeah, seeing them regularly. So coming into the office, hanging out with them, but also trying to take it beyond that, like trying to establish a relationship beyond just the PhD talk, so to say. That's quite important. That keeps people sane. And then on top of that, I've been very active with the student union. I enjoy working on improving the PhD experience at King's. So that has motivated me a lot lately.
Generally speaking, what are the challenges that you found? I know COVID is quite a specific and unique circumstance, but are there more general challenges in the PhD?
I think the general challenges of the PhD are anxiety for once. I think that's like the pressure of having to progress, and it's only you working on this, right? So you do you have your project. There aren't many people you can ask about help, because a lot of people have no idea of what you're doing and how they can possibly help you, even if they wanted to. So that's a struggle. And then the anxiety of like having to make progress, and it's not a linear, like progress is not linear. It like there are periods where you're on a plateau for, and it's difficult to imagine getting out of that. But there will be periods where you actually will make quite a bit of progress in a very short time. So like just trusting in the process of like if everyone could do it, there would be much more people working on these things, right? So like just believing that you can do it, but accepting that it is challenging, and like going easy on yourself to deal with anxiety, and to like trust the process. I think that's something I found very helpful. But yeah, so anxiety is one big challenge. Isolation is another one, like feeling very alone in the PhD, because as I mentioned, like you were one of the only people in the world that works on this. I mean, that's the idea of a PhD, right? Like, so that makes you quite alone, and so working on being part of a community helps a lot here as well.
You've given plenty of very useful advice already regarding the PhD itself and treating it as a job. Is there any advice you would give to someone applying in terms of perhaps the application process and other aspects of applying for a PhD?
Ooh, that's some time ago. Um, I would highly recommend people to start the application process early. So, like a proper year in advance, really think about, do you want to do a PhD and why do you want to do it? There are several reasons why you might want to do a PhD, and they're all legit. It just needs to be enough for you. Like these reasons needs to be there also 3-4 years in. So like really think about, why do you want to do a PhD, and is that desire strong enough to keep you going for a few years? And then what project are you interested in? And again, here, is that interest strong enough to keep you going for, like to really go into detail and to keep you going for a few years. And I think funding helps a lot. So how, like securing funding for your PhD takes a lot of the edge off, like you don't have to think about like how to make ends meet so much. So that requires to apply to funding bodies early. So the application process is usually, like for in social sciences, UKRI funding applications close, I think, end of January. So starting the application process early and having all your documents and your research proposal and everything ready by the beginning of the new year is very important. So I think that's the recommendation, the advice I would give to people applying for a PhD.
On the subject of advice, right, if you could have a chat with yourself on the first day that you started your PhD, what advice would you offer yourself?
I would tell myself to switch the project straight away. But then on the other hand, I mean, it is a learning process, right? Like I wouldn't be where I'm now if I hadn't gone through the whole process of like discovering my first project was kind of a dead end, and like I couldn't continue with that. And you do learn a lot along the line. So, and there are a lot of things. It's nice if someone tells you that, but you have to experience yourself. So, I think I would just tell myself to go easy and be like, like don't stress too much, and to know that COVID is a very difficult time to start in a new city, at a new university, at a new career path. So like all this is a challenging thing. Yeah, just relax more and enjoy the journey. I think that's what I would have told myself.
Okay, you briefly mentioned the value that you found in the community and in the PhD community, other people doing PhDs. What's that PhD community like?
It's great. I think we have a very vibrant PhD community at King's in general. So I think I love the diversity of King's. King's is such a big university, and we have so many fields of research. So we have people doing something completely different to what I'm doing, or people in my department are doing. I mean, like people doing medicine, doing engineering. There is a very broad spectrum of disciplines people are doing their PhD in. And I think that's great to exchange ideas and to be able to tap into all of that. So my current project is more of like it is placed in the political economy sphere, but because I am using AI, it has an overlap to informatics, right? So I am now tapping into these resources as well. So I am joining reading groups in the informatics department about reinforcement learning, and I think that's like having such an open community that welcomes people from different disciplines is great. And especially our department, I think there has been a desperate need after COVID to reconnect and socialize. And our offices are usually quite busy, which is lovely because we've all become very good friends. Sometimes they do distract a bit from working, but as I said, like I do feel like I'm home here now. I have a home in the UK. I have friends. I have my social community. So, and that's good. That's great.
Good stuff. Well, thank you so much. And I think that brings an end to today's episode. I would like to thank my co-host for today, Yahia, for his support as always. And I'd like to thank you too, Lina, for sharing your thoughts and insights with us today. And of course, thanks also to you, our listeners, for taking the time to tune in. And we look forward to welcoming you again soon for our next episode. Take care.